Thank you. It's wonderful to be back in Australia, which I do consider my home. And many of you know that I actually have been living here for the last 18 years. And this mission that I'm on, spreading the word, trying to reveal the truth about what's happening with women and hormones, has taken me back to the United States, where I travel extensively, as Duncan said, in Europe and Canada. And it's a mission that's growing, and it's a really important mission. And today, what I'd like to do is share with you the research that I've been doing and reveal the real story about what's going on with women and with our children. And I have to let you know, all the folks in the audience here, it's happening. The men are being affected. There's some serious problems with men. So this is not just to talk about women and hormones, although we're going to be exploring a lot about what is happening to the women in the world and the many consequences to all of us. So just a little bit about me. When I was 44 years old, about 44, strange things started to happen to me. I was waking up in the middle of the night, about 3 a.m., with major anxiety attacks. I had this panicky feeling going on almost every night. Anyone ever get panic attacks here? They're not fun, and panic attacks in women is probably one of the major psychiatric conditions for which women are medicated, usually with things like Paxil, very common. And I'm a psychotherapist by training, so when these panic attacks started happening, I assumed they were psychological of some nature, and I sought out the professional help of colleagues, and nothing helped. Nothing helped. So they were going on for about a year and a half. Meanwhile, I was experiencing fatigue, putting on some weight, mood swings, which were always a part of my life anyway, low libido, and then something really unusual started to happen for me. I started waking up with these drenching night sweats from the waist up. And so I was waking up every night with these drenching night sweats, and I was waking up with these anxiety attacks, and I was becoming pretty incapacitated in my life, as happens with so many women. So at 44 years of age, as a psychotherapist working with mind-body approaches, so pretty aware of, the holistic model of things, I really was taken aback by all of this. I really didn't understand what was going on. And up until those night sweats, I thought a lot of the symptoms that I was describing were either related to some unresolved fears that I was carrying around, or, aging, or just a little stress, or whatever. Hormones were not in my consciousness, were not on the radar screen for me. But the night sweats really made me start to take notice. So I began a journey to find out a way to resolve what was getting very serious. And I'm a researcher by nature. I like to go in and investigate. I'm also holistic by nature, so I really always seek out holistic approaches. I don't believe that using drugs and suppressing symptoms with toxic chemicals really is going to do much good for us. So I began to look into this issue of hormones. And as I began to investigate, a few things came to my awareness. First of all, I was aware that I was approaching menopause. Well, that was a shock, because I hadn't thought about that. And then when you think about menopause, you automatically start thinking about what? If you did a word association, menopause means hormones, right? So all of a sudden, I had to start thinking about hormone replacement therapy. I didn't even know what that was. And then I had the biggest shock of all. And I realized that here I was, 44 years of age. I hadn't a clue about my own body as a woman. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know what was going on. I never paid any attention to my own natural menstrual cycles. Oblivious. So I really was starting at zero. This is where I began this investigation. No knowledge at all. So my curiosity led me to start reading, and then I started to look at journals, and then I started to call up clinicians and researchers all over the world. I needed to find some answers. And as I began to investigate this subject, I got really confused. Now, who's confused about hormones in this room? Anybody? Because we're told things like this. As women, we're told that if you don't take hormones, You're going to have your heart stop beating. Your bones are going to crack. You're going to fall apart. You'll probably lose your mind with Alzheimer's, which means you don't worry about the other things anyway. But you know, it's like your life is a deteriorating downward spiral. But if you do take hormones, then you're at risk of breast cancer. Then you're at risk of strokes, of blood clots. You know, so it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And as I began to research this, I understood the confusion because I was thoroughly confused. It's like, could it be what I am investigating, what I'm uncovering, what I'm learning here outside the paradigm of traditional medicine is actually truthful information, and everything that we're told, everything that we see in the television, in the newspaper, in those women's magazines, in our doctor's office is actually wrong. It can't be. And I just continued to investigate and research. And then I arrived at a place where I had the answer. You know, when you do enough reading, when you learn enough, when you understand the terms, when it kind of filters in and you get a grasp of things, it all comes together. And when it came together, the conclusion that I arrived at is that just about everything we as women are being told about our hormones is wrong, are lies. We're being betrayed, deceived, and probably dying along the way. And so it's time that we as women really wake up. And that revelation, and by the way, out of that research, I found solutions for my own night sweats and anxiety attacks. In my book, I write about the use of natural progesterone cream, which is available in Australia only through doctors' prescriptions. It's considered a poison here. But there are other natural alternatives, and some we'll be able to talk about today, and some are in the book, and some will be in the lectures and workshops I'll be doing all around New South Wales and Queensland and Victoria. We'll talk about that program. I'm about to start a 35-city lecture tour over the next 7 weeks, all over Australia. So things are getting bigger and bigger. And the thing I love about Australia is that when you start getting out there, you can make a huge impact in changing consciousness of things. So I intend to be changing lots of consciousness and getting up a lot of people's noses as well, which, as we heard earlier, if you're getting attacked, that's a good sign. So this is what changed my life. I solved my own hormonal problems. All the symptoms disappeared when I worked with natural approaches, when I increased my progesterone level. We'll talk about what all this means in a minute. I changed my career, I changed my home, everything changed, and you know, there's a purpose and a passion that I have now that I never really had before, and it seems that it really is more important than ever before. In my book, I write about predictions made by Nostradamus, who had predictions for women. And he said at the beginning of this millennium, where we are now, is that this is a time when the emergence of the feminine is absolutely crucial, because it's only those values, that feminine energy of compassion, of caring, of cooperation, of honoring nature, honoring natural cycles, will help to transform this world. And Nostradamus said that every aspect of our culture, of our society, will be transformed by the feminine. And to do that, what he said is we must return to natural cycles. We must return to nature. We must return to the harmony again. And in fact, I met Native American elders as I traveled around the United States. One was the elder of the Hopi Nation, Thomas Banyaka, and he had a prophecy given to him in 1996. And this prophecy said that for the next 4 years, women must find their medicine. We're not talking pharmaceutical here, right? You know, women must find their medicine. They must find the natural wisdom within themselves, the harmony, the balance again within themselves, naturally. Going back to natural approaches, he said, because the women are the power that will clean up the mess that the men have made. So, and it's true, you know. Well, anyway, so this is a very important time. It's been predicted in all traditions. It's been predicted in esoteric Judaism, the return of the feminine. It's been wherever I look, I find predictions. And we're talking about a consciousness. We're talking not just about women. We're talking about the feminine energy within all of us, within men and women. But as women, we embody this energy. We embody this power. And it's very imperative that we, as women, our first task as women is to find balance and harmony within ourselves and within our own hormonal nature. Because if we are hormonally out of balance, we cannot be in touch with the true power of the feminine. And if we are taking drugs, particularly the synthetic hormones, we can never truly be in balance and in harmony and in touch with our feminine wisdom. Now, why do I say that? Well, the United States government last year, the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, actually, they have a board of toxicologists, and they review all the research and then make recommendations for drugs that have sufficient evidence to put them on the list of known human carcinogens. And last year they came out with their latest list, and on that list of known human carcinogens are all synthetic estrogens. All synthetic estrogens. That's the estrogens in hormone replacement therapy, the estrogens in the pill, and the estrogens used in fertility drugs. Known human carcinogens. Now, the other ingredient in hormone replacement therapy, or the other ingredient in the pill, are synthetic progestins. These are man-made progestins, not natural progesterone, not the same molecule that the body makes, synthetic progestins. And as early as 1975, it was known that these progestins are carcinogenic. And these progestins are also listed in that list of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences as known human carcinogens. And there's one other drug, by the way, that happens to be listed on that list as a known human carcinogen. I've written about this in Nexus. It's the #1 prescription drug for women who are recovering from breast cancer. What's that drug? Tamoxifen. Tamoxifen, which is the #1 drug given to women who are recovering from breast cancer, is a known human carcinogen. It has a few other side effects, like making my sister-in-law go blind. Fortunately, when she stopped, she recovered. And also, Premarin has been on that list of known human carcinogens for many, many, many years. So think about this. We're taking women, going through natural cycles, maybe having a few symptoms, and all hormonal symptoms, the hot flashes in this country, the hot flushes, the night sweats, memory loss, the weight gain, PMS. Because my research started with my perimenopausal journey. It kind of made me look at the menopause thing, the postmenopausal thing, and then it was like, oh my God. As I walked through the looking glass, there it was, issues relating to young girls on the pill, issues relating to hysterectomies, issues relating to, the tamoxifen drug. And breast cancer. In fact, I've just finished my second book, which is called Mothers Don't Let Your Daughters Get Breast Cancer. It's about the growing incidence of breast cancer that's occurring in young women. We've seen this in Australia when I was here a few months ago. 20-year-old girls being diagnosed with breast cancer. This is a trend. This is a worrying trend, and we're going to talk about what's contributing to this trend. Because the younger a girl is exposed, put this way, the younger the girl is when she is diagnosed with breast cancer, the more likely she will have more aggressive tumors and die within 5 years. Our young girls. The youngest girl I interviewed was 17 years old, who was first diagnosed with breast cancer. There are some really important things happening, and we are being kept in the dark. How many people saw the movie The Matrix? Okay. Oh, well, of course it was made in this country. You all see it, right? So how many saw it more than once? Has anyone seen it more than 12 times? Okay. I've seen it 12 times. To me, it's the most profound movie. So if most of you seen the movie, you understand that metaphor of being given that choice of the blue pill or the red pill. So the blue pill is the pill that lets you go to sleep, forget you ever in this room, ever came to this conference, ever heard any of this stuff, and you just go back to your 9-to-5 life. And the red pill is the pill that, if you choose to continue sitting in your seat, you know that you've taken. And the red pill is the pill that lets you lift the veil and see the truth about what's really going on. But you know, when you lift the veil and see the truth, is it necessarily pretty? It can be very upsetting, very emotional, very difficult, very challenging when you see the truth. We're going to be, this whole weekend is about lifting the veil. But we're particularly in this segment going to be lifting the veil about what's happening with women. And the other part of that movie that to me is extremely profound is when he took the red pill and the world started to change and started to dissolve, and he started to see what was really going on, and he was that little cocoon, right? He was being raised. That's a very powerful metaphor too, because these human beings are being raised by the way that the Japanese made the first artificial womb a couple of weeks ago. So sometimes movies you wonder, are they as fictional as we think? Anyway, so these crop of humans are being raised to feed this other culture, to suck the life force from this other culture. So all these beings are being raised, be kept alive for one purpose only, to feed that machine culture. It's a very powerful metaphor because we as women are feeding a multi-billion-dollar industry. There are no bones about this. There's one reason, and one reason only, why women are being prescribed known human carcinogenic drugs, going through natural cycles, in some cases with no symptoms whatsoever going on, because we are feeding a huge, voracious industry that is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I was just looking at the latest Nexus magazine, which I recommend you pick up. But anyway, it says, funny enough, the drug companies continue to increase profits. Pharmaceuticals again ranked as the most profitable sector in the United States in 2001, topping the annual Fortune 500 ranking of American corporations. And it goes on to say how the pharmaceutical industry is just growing. No other industry can match the growth. And where does that growth come from? Off of our bodies, off of these drugs that have 120 possible risks and side effects. These drugs are known to cause breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, brain cancer, lung cancers, strokes, blood clots, increase weight gain, depression, and we'll see many of the other symptoms as we go through the journey today. And I claim, and this is pretty obvious to me, many of the growing incidence of women's health problems, heart disease, cancers, diabetes, gallbladder disease, depression, Alzheimer's, I see these conditions as directly caused by the use of hormones in women. From the time we are, what's the age we're now marketing to? We're marketing to girls about 14, 15 years old for what? For contraception? We marketing the pill as a contraceptive? No. The pill has become a therapeutic drug. We're marketing to 14 and 15-year-old girls for acne. For acne. You want to clear up acne? Not a problem. Get rid of your junk food, take good nutritional support, some herbs, reduce your stress, drink more water. You can easily get rid of your acne. But what are doctors saying? What are doctors doing? Doctors are encouraging young girls, very sensitive breast tissue, responding to this high surges of estrogen up to 100 times more than their bodies would be making. And not only that, as we get into the pill, because 90% of women in Western cultures have been on the pill. I was put on the pill at 16 to regulate my period. How many women were put on the pill to regulate their periods? Some of you are probably still on the pill to regulate your periods. Well, you want to hear insane thinking? The pill works because it mimics what? pregnancy. It puts high levels of synthetic hormones into a woman's body to mimic pregnancy, because that's when you're pregnant, your body is no longer ovulating. So when you take the pill, you're taking high doses of synthetic carcinogenic hormones into your body, and it causes what is known as chemical castration. It switches off the ovaries. Your hormones are no longer made by your reproductive organs because the body is now getting these synthetic versions. How can that regulate your period? In fact, I often ask this question to women who are on the pill, because, by the way, it used to be that no woman over the age of 35 was ever allowed to be on the pill because of the risk of what? Strokes. Now we're putting women on the pill at 45 under the mistaken belief that that will help them with their perimenopausal symptoms. So when women are on the pill, do women menstruate on the pill? No. But most women say, I have such regular periods when I'm on the pill. No, you don't get regular periods on the pill. You don't ever menstruate when you're on the pill. Your reproductive organs are shut down. You have a forced bleed. You never menstruate as long as you're on the pill, which is why, according to a billionaire who makes fertility drugs, as quoted in the Wall Street Journal, says that some of his best clients are women in their 30s who took the pill as teenagers and 20-year-olds. Because we have a growing epidemic of infertility in this country. And then what do we do with these women? We put them on the IVF program, which is high doses of estrogen. And one of the contraindications of estrogen is do not use if you're pregnant, because it causes birth deformities. So if you're so lucky as to conceive while you're on high doses of estrogen like Clomid, you have a high probability you will conceive a child who has some level of deformity. This is brilliant medical technology of the 21st century. So let's take our journey. You know, this is about honoring our cycles. This is about returning to the power of the feminine, returning to the sacredness in our bodies. My experience is when I began to really tune into my body and honor my body and pay attention to my menstrual cycles, you know, in my mid-40s when all this was happening, there was an amazing transformation in my life. And I finally experienced what it was to be free of mood swings. I finally arrived at a point in my life where I tapped into a sense of inner authority and power that I'd been searching for my whole life. And the revelation for me, and this is what I teach, is that we as women, our power as women comes from finding the harmony and balance within our hormones. And we can step into a place where we've never been before, because most of us, as a psychotherapist, I know, most of women I see are struggling daily with fear, anxiety, mood swings, feeling not good enough, having fatigue, headaches. These are signs of imbalance. All hormonal imbalance. We have to change our paradigm here. All hormonal imbalance is a symptom of poor health. It is not nature cursing us. It is not the fate of being a woman. It is not the downhill slide of menopause. If we were healthy, we would have no symptoms at menopause, as many cultures experience. All symptoms of menopause in our culture, including hot flashes, I will tell you, are powerful messages from your body letting you know something is out of balance, and generally it's your liver. It is not something that's inevitable. I had no symptoms when I went through menopause, none. And Margaret Mead says something interesting about menopause. She said there's nothing more powerful than a menopausal woman with zest. And that's the truth. You know, menopause, according to traditional cultures which I've studied, menopause is a time. It's like the culmination of life experiences. We harvest them and we take them within, and we as Chinese say, menopause is the second spring. We get reborn into our true sense of power and inner authority and purpose and passion in life. A woman that is truly in balance within herself will move into those wise woman years healthier, more vital, more committed, more alert than ever before. It's a fabulous time, but we have to get healthy. There's a saying that I use a lot in my practice that goes, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. And if any woman in this room is suffering from any health problem, particularly women's issues, it's because things have to change. You can't continue doing what you're doing, eating what you're eating, stressing yourself out the way you're stressing yourself out, doing the drugs that you've been doing. You have to be willing to change if you want something else. And let me promise you, if you're committed to doing that, your life will transform itself and you'll become everything you've ever wanted to be. Have the body you wanted, the health, the vitality. I want to die healthy. That's my goal. And I want to get younger as I move on in age. I want to get younger and more vital and, just feel better. And that's what I'm committed to learning. That's what I'm committed and finding the discipline to do for myself. And I can tell you, I am younger now at 54 than I was at 44. I feel better in myself. My body's healthier. I've learned a lot along the way, which is why we're doing a workshop here in, I think, beginning of July, so I can teach you these things. You're not going to get them from your doctor, believe me. In fact, I have to honestly tell you, if you really want to get healthy, if you really want your body to regenerate, rejuvenate, then you don't ever want to go to a doctor, a traditional medical doctor. All they'll do is drug you, and I get thousands and thousands of emails and letters and phone calls from women who've been seriously misdiagnosed, mistreated, and maimed as a result of believing and being subservient to their doctor's wishes, who really, I have to say, when it comes to women, they don't really know a thing. So, and just, if I can just make that point, this came out of the Herald Sun, Melbourne, and it was over World Menopause Day, and there's a very famous women's health center in Melbourne called the Jean Hales Foundation, and it's considered very women-orientated, and they were interviewed, and they have not 10 myths about menopause, separating fact from fiction. And one of these myths was really interesting to me. The myth is women can get cancer from HRT. The myth. Women can get cancer from HRT. That's a lie, according to them. And then they go on to say, fact, HRT does not cause cancer. This is a women's orientated clinic. HRT does not cause cancer, but one large study has indicated it may be linked to a small increase in breast cancer. There's something wrong with this statement here. And I'm going, oh my God, taking HRT for 5 years or more may result in about 2 extra cases of breast cancer per 1,000. Okay, who volunteers to be the 2 extra cases? Or maybe you'd like to volunteer your mother-in-laws? When have we become so callous that we say statistics 2 out of 1,000, which is not true? One of the leading studies, in fact, there are so many studies that show that HRT causes breast cancer. We don't even need to put another dime into research. And one of the leading studies found that for every year a woman takes hormone replacement therapy, her risk of breast cancer increases by 8 to 12% per year. Per year. How many years is a woman advised to be on HRT? Yeah, 10, 20, 30 years? How dare they do that to us? So, we need to dissolve a few myths. If we're going to be empowered, we can't just go into a doctor's office not knowing anything about our bodies. We're then sitting ducks. So a few things we need to know. First of all, the ovaries are the major reproductive organs that make 2 key hormones, estrogen and progesterone. We hear a lot about estrogen deficiency, right? And we'll see where that comes from in a minute. But anyway, the ovaries make estrogen. And the ovaries also, when you ovulate, you must ovulate, you must release an egg, and when you release an egg, then the site that egg is released from turns into this amazing endocrine gland called the corpus luteum, which produces progesterone. So these are two key hormones in a woman's body. Now the myth really tells us that at menopause, the ovaries fail and cease to produce estrogen, which is the whole rationale for an industry called hormone replacement therapy. The only problem with that premise is that it's wrong. Do you think nature made a design fault in women? Do you think we're just made to, fall apart when we reach 50? No. What happens at menopause is that we're going through another stage of our life. Do you think women were really meant to fall pregnant in their 60s and 70s? Excuse me. We like being grandparents because you get the kids, and then what? You give them back. I had friends who got, conceived when they're in their late 40s, so they're my age with, 6, 7-year-old kids. Let me tell you, it is not easy. Nature has other things in store for us in our wise woman years. Our fertility years have a purpose. Our prepubescent years have a purpose. We're going through a cycle. We have to honor each cycle. When we're going into menopause, we are not needing to be fertile women giving birth and raising children. That's like another door is opening in our lives. So what does nature do? It reduces the amount of estrogen made by the ovaries by about 40 to 60%, just low enough so we don't mature eggs. Our ovaries function the entire length of our lives. What does drop dramatically is the progesterone levels, because if you're not ovulating, you're not making progesterone. But nature has some really amazing backup systems. So for instance, our adrenal glands in a postmenopausal woman, or a woman who's had a hysterectomy, which is of course instant to menopause, especially if your ovaries are removed, the adrenals become our backup system making these hormones. We also make estrogen in the fat cells of our body. In fact, the World Health Organization found that an overweight postmenopausal woman has more estrogen circulating in her body than a skinny premenopausal woman. Estrogen is not our problem. We have some of the highest levels of estrogen ever recorded in history, occurring in both women and men. The prostate gland is the gland in men that originated in utero from the same cells that made the uterus. So the prostate has estrogen-sensitive receptors in it. The prostate responds to huge flows of estrogen. And when estrogen is out of balance, when you have large amounts of estrogen, the prostate gets overstimulated and can lead to enlarged prostates and prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is the result of high levels of estrogen. And so is uterine cancer, and so are all the other reproductive cancers. So the liver is another major organ that helps to metabolize hormones. In fact, in Chinese medicine, they believe that the liver is the key organ to proper hormonal balance. We have a whole system that is working to bring us into balance. Now, one of the things that we're told, here's another myth, there's a belief that at perimenopause, that 5 to 10 years before you have a cessation of your menstrual cycle, it's called perimenopause, what we're told is that we have declining estrogen levels. That's why women in their 40s are put either on the pill or are put on HRT. Well, in fact, there's a Canadian researcher who found that, very important finding actually, that at perimenopause, it's like the last big hurrah. The pituitary is trying to get the ovaries to do its last big thing. We have some of the highest recorded levels of estrogen in our perimenopausal years, but we're not ovulating regularly, so we have low progesterone levels. And therefore, perimenopause is a time of high estrogen dominance as it's called. The symptoms of hot flashes, of weight gain, of insomnia, of fogginess, of mood swings, these are symptoms of estrogen excess To put women on the pill, to put women on HRT when they already have high levels is like adding fuel to a fire. And that's what's becoming common, because the belief in the medical model is that perimenopause is declining estrogen levels. It's a red herring. Estrogen deficiency is a red herring. It is not a truth. You know, our hormones are so powerful that they are made in parts per billion and parts per trillion. They are potent substances altering and affecting every single system and cell in our body. When we talk about reproductive hormones, the sex hormones, we think they just hang out in the ovaries. They are altering immune system, respiratory system, circulatory system, digestive system. Every single function in our body is affected by the flow of hormones. So I don't know if you saw this. Time magazine. Recently, this is about a month ago, I guess now, it's about medical testing, about human guinea pigs, how the drug companies use people in their testing. And it's quite a terrifying expose. But when I saw this, I immediately had to get this copy because it reminds me of the fact that any woman who's taking hormones is part of a scientific experiment. There are no long-term studies showing the safety of hormone replacement therapy. Do you know that? The first study is due out in the year 2004 or 5. Every single woman who may be on hormones in this room, or women that you know who may be on hormones, are guinea pigs. There are no long-term studies. And it's okay to be a guinea pig, but do it out of informed consent. This was a wonderful article, actually, in the Fin Review, Unhealthy Signs, New Doubts Over Hormone Drugs. You see this a couple years ago? Fabulous article. And it says, basically, the reporter says about HRT, it remains an experimental treatment, and the millions of women taking it long-term can be seen as guinea pigs. We're guinea pigs. So, this was the headline. Research suggests little value other than for hot flashes. Basically, and in fact, the New York Times came out with a major article in advance of a finding that's coming out in June, basically stating that a new report by a panel of international experts cast doubt on long-standing claims that hormone replacement can prevent or treat a variety of ills in postmenopausal women, including heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, severe depression, urinary incontinence, and broken bones caused by osteoporosis. The hormone treatments have well-documented drawbacks, including an increased risk of blood clots and gallbladder disease and breast cancer with prolonged use. We have the studies. We don't need more studies. So how did we get here? How did we arrive at the 21st century where we're medicating women's natural cycles with toxic carcinogenic drugs, and we have women asking for it? We have women convinced, terrified. If they don't do it, something terrible is going to happen. And one of the reasons is this book. This book, which is was written in 1966 by Dr. Robert Wilson. You know, when I've done this research, everything that we believe, how do we know what we know? Why do we believe what we believe? When you really think about it, we've been taught it. We've been brainwashed. We've been indoctrinated. And when it comes to women and how women are treated, there's been a very concerted campaign to brainwash researchers, doctors, the media, everybody concerned, so we would buy more drugs. So, Robert Wilson was a gynecologist in New York. He did one study, and his study, the results of his study brought him to the conclusion that every woman at her menopausal years must be on estrogen replacement. Because his study told him that the ovaries shrivel up and die as a result of menopause. He's been quoted in medical journals ever since. The woman becomes the equivalent of a eunuch. No woman can be sure of escaping the horror of this living decay. Every woman faces the threat of extreme suffering and incapacity. I have seen women who have shriveled into caricatures of their former selves. And this is my favorite line. The transformation within a few years of a formerly pleasant, energetic woman into a dull-minded but sharp-tongued caricature of her former self is one of the saddest of human spectacles. So you can tell he just loved menopausal women. So a few interesting notes about Robert Wilson. He was discredited by the FDA as a reputable researcher. His research was totally flawed. He also had a trust fund set up in his name, and he had very generous donations of about $1.5 million by the three leading manufacturers of, guess what? He was their front man. That book sold 100,000 copies in 7 months. I should be so lucky, you know? It's like he had 5,000 women knocking on his door pleading to take estrogen. It was estrogen replacement therapy. 1966. And so we moved from the beginning of the pill in the 1960s, with cheap use, hormones were very cheaply manufactured at that point. And the pill only had one study done for 1 year on 120 Puerto Rican women, 5 of whom died of heart attacks. That was a study that approved the pill. That's great research, right there. And so they had more of these hormones. What can we do with them? We got to find a new market. Up until that time, menopause was a psychiatric condition. It wasn't a medical condition. So up until the 1960s, women were given tranquilizers, shock treatment, put in psychiatric hospitals. But it wasn't a medical condition. When cheap hormones came available, it then became a medical condition. So Robert Wilson started this trend to medicalize women. For 10 years, estrogen replacement therapy was the treatment given to menopausal women with uteruses. And in 1976, 2 studies came out simultaneously. And the 2 studies that came out, published studies, simultaneously reported why there was an 800% increase in uterine cancer over the last 10 years. You know why? Because the only known cause of uterine cancer to date is from estrogen. So there were women dying of uterine cancer. There were women who were having hysterectomies because of uterine cancer. That's what they tell women with tamoxifen. Don't worry, one of the side effects of tamoxifen is you are at greater risk of getting uterine cancer. But we have a wonderful treatment for that. That's what they tell women, don't worry. We can just yank out that, symptomatic, bleeding, useless organ, which is how the doctors define the uterus. The uterus has a function the entire length of a woman's life. It makes a hormone called prostacyclin that looks after the heart and blood vessels that there is no replacement for. By the way, does the uterus make estrogen? Here's a little pop quiz. Who says the uterus makes estrogen? Who's the yes? Who's the no? Who's the, I wouldn't have a clue? Okay. Well, actually, the uterus does not make estrogen. It doesn't make estrogen. So here's a question I ask doctors. Well, why is the standard of care to put women on Premarin or some form of estrogen as soon as they have a hysterectomy? Removal of uterus. And you know what they say? They do. They don't know. It's totally absurd. It's a totally absurd treatment because the number 1 reason for hysterectomies is fibroids. The number 2 reason is endometriosis, all of which is caused by too much estrogen in a woman's body. So you take Premarin for the hysterectomy, it's like removing the symptom, the presenting symptom, but the cause is still there. So in the mid-1960s, there was this concerted campaign to get women on hormones. And these actually are the advertising campaigns that were used in medical journals to change our perceptions. And see how effective, because if that's our fate, we would take arsenic. We would do anything, right? It's like, I don't care what it is. I'll do it. I don't want to be like that. It's like, it's very, very effective advertising. In fact, in 1976, when it was found that estrogen replacement therapy was causing this 800% increase in uterine cancer, they quickly had to change their whole tactic. They reformulated, added synthetic progestins, never tested to be safe, mimicking the woman's natural balance of hormones between progesterone and estrogen, and created hormone replacement therapy. No trials, no testing. Women really weren't too keen on it, so well, we'll see what they've done in a minute. So these are the, when women outlive their ovaries. Did you know that? We're living too long. We're outliving our ovaries. And this is what was done when estrogen replacement therapy was realized to be a major medical mistake. Oops, so sorry, ladies. Neither a major medical mistake. How about DES? That was a major medical mistake. The first pill, the first high-dose pill, oops, major medical mistake. We're sorry, ladies. We have short memories. History is really interesting. There's a quote I like: history is written by the winners. So, and the winners in this case, we know who they are, right? So what happened in 76, when estrogen was found to be the only known cause of uterine cancer, and the drug company said, oh, we're really sorry, made a mistake here, they had to go back, reformulate it, add the synthetic progesterone, created hormone replacement therapy, and women weren't buying it. So something had to be done. What can we do? So what they did was to create another condition, which they really spent about 5 years in marketing, and got Madison Avenue involved, and it was called osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is not a woman's disease. It is not an estrogen deficiency disease. It is not a menopause disease. We have 20-year-olds with osteoporosis in this culture. We have teenagers right now in this culture with osteoporosis. It is not a menopause condition. It starts way earlier than that. But Madison Avenue got in there and created an image. What was the image that we really bought hook, line, and sinker that scared us back to using hormones? Dowager hump? And it was very effective. Give your patient one of these, and you won't have to give her both of these. It was a very successful advertising campaign, and that's the birth of hormone replacement therapy for osteoporosis. They had to add something to get us back. Now, the advertising industry continues to play a huge role. I hope it never happens here, but nothing surprises me anymore. But in the United States, drug companies can advertise directly in the media. They spend about $3 billion a year in direct marketing. And it's extremely successful because their drug sales have tripled as a result of direct marketing. And they direct market all sorts of interesting drugs. I mean, every commercial break has several drugs on it. And then you have women's magazines, and it's all over the place. But this is very powerful programming. See that little pill up there? Isn't that sweet? The purple and pink pill. That's a pill. It's called Seraphim. I'll get to that in a minute. Seraphim is one of those drugs that actually is an interesting story, Seraphim. There's a condition that is found here in Australia. You might have read about it. It's called premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Anybody hear about it? PMDD? Has anyone heard about it? PMDD. Now, what is PMDD? It's written up in your psychiatric, it's a psychiatric condition, so it's in your psychiatric kind of book of disorders. And It's characterized by mood swings, irritability, depression a week or two before your menstrual cycle, and it has to be accompanied by a physiological condition like bloating. Sound familiar? So if you chart, you have to chart yourself for 2 months, and if a week or two before your menstrual cycle you get irritable, you get depressed, you have mood swings, and you may get a little bloating, then you probably have PMDD. Now there is one drug that's been officially approved for the treatment of premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which has only been in existence for 2 years. And the drug is called Seraphim. That little pink purple pill, it's very sweet. There's another name to Seraphim. The drug actually has another name. It's called Prozac. And when I checked in the United States on the cost of Seraphim as compared to Prozac, it was $10 more expensive. But the really interesting part of this story is that Prozac, Eli Lilly makes Prozac, and their patent was up last year or so, or was going to be up. So what Eli Lilly did is created a condition called premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and had it put into a psychiatric book of disorders, and got approved that their drug is the only approved drug to treat PMDD. And guess what happened to their patent? It got extended for another 7 years. So Prozac, interesting drug. Side effects include depression, anxiety, insomnia, loss of libido, suicidal rages, and breast cancer. And this is the drug that we are giving to young women with PMDD, because they get a little moody before their periods. And I talked to a psychiatrist in Melbourne, and I said, "Oh, do you prescribe, do you have PMDD?" "Oh, yes." And I said, "So you prescribe Seraphim?" "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, what happens to the physiological problem?" He goes, "Oh, well, for that I give the pill." If it wasn't so pathetic, so sad, because do you know what some of the side effects of the pill are for women? Well, it definitely causes breast cancer. It causes breast cancer in some cases with just a short period of use, especially in young women whose breast tissue is incredibly sensitive. The pill causes blood clots and strokes. We talked about infertility. Estrogen causes depletion of all your B vitamins, your folic acid, your vitamin C, your vitamin E, your magnesium, your selenium, zinc, and tyrosine, the amino acid that supports thyroid function. When you create deficiencies of these nutrients, you have a weakened immune system. You can't support pregnancies. And if you should get pregnant with those nutritional deficiencies, you can give birth to a child with spina bifida, neural tube disorders, learning disabilities, and God knows what else. And we're giving the pill to young women in this country like it was candy. No warnings by doctors. We're not telling women that they're at greater risk of cervical cancer. They're at greater risk of ovarian cancer, contrary to popular belief. They're at greater risk of breast cancer, of depression, of weight gain, of diabetes, of asthma. Estrogen is pro-inflammatory. More women go to the emergency rooms right before their periods with asthma. Estrogen is pro-inflammatory. We're treating women with the pill for ovarian cysts, endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, sometimes just depression. Of course, then we have painful periods, irregular periods. All these conditions are symptoms of poor health, symptoms of imbalance. We can treat them easily, successfully, with benign substances. Instead, we're putting our young women on carcinogenic drugs, and no one's telling them the truth. And we wonder why we have a problem with infertility in this country. So that's one of my other favorite ones, because Milk does not prevent osteoporosis. The 5 leading dairy-consuming countries in the world have the 5 highest rates of osteoporosis. The 5 lowest consuming dairy countries in the world have the lowest rates of osteoporosis. There is no study that has ever been done to show that milk is beneficial for bones, especially the form of the milk we drink these days. It is called the dairy industry. Advertising hype. So what we need to understand is this balance, this ratio between these 2 key hormones, estrogen and progesterone, is absolutely vital. Absolutely vital. And what we're seeing in this chart here is that when we're in balance, estrogen and progesterone balance each other. They're vital for balancing each other. When hormones get out of balance, and generally it's a deficiency of progesterone and excess of estrogen, estrogen becomes a toxic substance in the body. And B, it says relative production of estrogen and progesterone during anovulatory premenstrual cycles. When a woman is not ovulating, when she's not, not having regular menstrual cycles, she's not ovulating, she's not making progesterone. She has a whole month when she has high levels of estrogen. It's called PMS. The symptoms of PMS, the mood swings, the bloating, the insomnia, the allergies, are all signs of estrogen excess. It's also the same estrogen excess conditions that are affecting the perimenopausal women. And then C is relative production of estrogen and progesterone after menopause. There's a huge drop of progesterone. We must have strong adrenal glands. When we have a culture of adrenal exhaustion, we don't have our backup system. And that's what happened to me when I was 44, and I got those panic attacks, and I got those night sweats. Night sweats are about exhausted adrenal glands. And the weight gain, all those things were from high estrogen levels, low progesterone levels. I went through 7 years of working, 48 weekends out of the year, 70, 80 hours a week, thinking I was making it really successful. I wasn't eating properly, I wasn't resting properly, and I had totally exhausted my adrenal glands. And at 44, what I was experiencing as perimenopause was really adrenal exhaustion. As it is for most women, the symptoms that you have that doctors tell you are perimenopause, menopause symptoms are symptoms of some level of compromised health. Because if you were healthy, you wouldn't have any symptoms. So here are some of the symptoms. You may recognize them of estrogen dominance. What's really happening in a culture where we have huge amount of pollution of hormone mimics, huge amount of use of hormones in meat, imbalances within our own body from adrenal exhaustion to toxic livers, all lead to high estrogen levels. So it accelerates the aging. Who heard that estrogen is good for your skin? Keeps your skin young? Anyone hear that? Because that's one of the major selling points. So here's a quote out of Prempro, one of the major HRT formulas. It says, "It's believed that estrogen keeps your skin youthful and wrinkle-free. There is no evidence to these claims, and long-term use of estrogen can be harmful to your health." See, it's another lie to get us to buy hormones. In fact, not only does estrogen have no benefit in keeping our skin young and youthful, it accelerates the aging of our skin. It accelerates the aging of our whole body. It also increases allergies. As we said, estrogen is pro-inflammatory. Autoimmune diseases are inflammatory conditions. More women have autoimmune diseases like lupus, like MS, because it's related to hormonal imbalances, estrogen excess condition. Sore, tender breasts, decreased sex drive, fatigue, fat. Estrogen turns food into fat. Why? We give estrogen to the cattle in the feedlot. You know that here, And why? Well, the United States used to take 5 years to get a calf up to time to be slaughtered. Now it takes 16 months, and they're working on getting it down to 11 months because now they've got hormones. And hormones accelerates the growth and accelerates the weight. So you take too much estrogen into your body, or your body's out of balance with too much estrogen, you'll start putting the weight on, especially the hips, the thighs, the abdomen. And you know what? No amount of starving yourself and no amount of exercise is going to lose it as long as you're hormonally out of balance. In fact, those conditions will probably worsen the problem. So we have to get our hormones in balance. And I've had women who've taken progesterone cream and have lost up to 25 pounds just by taking progesterone, because it restores balance. And progesterone turns that fat back into energy. So foggy thinking, more women have gallbladder disease. There was a study that was done on the heart, which is when the American Heart Association and the Australian Heart Association came out shortly afterwards, saying that HRT has no benefit for protecting against heart disease. It actually increases the incidence of heart attacks. And by the way, it also will almost triple the risk of strokes and about triple the amount of gallbladder disease. And if you have gallbladder disease, it generally means what? You have to remove your gallbladder surgically. So many women have removed, and it's a huge problem. A huge percentage of women have their gallbladders removed due to this hormonal imbalance. So headaches, hypoglycemia. Estrogen interferes with blood sugar levels, increased blood clotting, strokes, infertility, irritability, memory loss, miscarriage, osteoporosis, premenopausal bone loss. Dr. Geraldine Pryor, a Canadian researcher, found that young girls, premenopausal girls, they were athletes actually, and they had low fat in their bodies, and they weren't menstruating every year, or they weren't menstruating every month. And when she measured them, they had normal estrogen levels, but very low progesterone levels, and were losing bone mass. Then she did a survey of the general population and found that up to 50% of women in their 20s and 30s are not ovulating every month, at greater risk of no progesterone to balance estrogen, because progesterone really is the key hormone for bones. High levels of estrogen, low progesterone leads to osteoporosis. They also did another study recently that showed women who take the pill have increased incidence of osteoporosis. So anyway, so PMS, estrogen interferes with thyroid function. In this country, I would say, maybe 20%, maybe even higher, women actually have undiagnosed thyroid imbalance. And one of the symptoms of thyroid imbalance is depression and weight gain, hypothyroidism. And estrogen interferes with thyroid function, leading to hypothyroidism. Cancer, fibroids, water retention. Anyone relate to any of those symptoms? Women go to doctors with those symptoms and they're told, of course then we have the hot flashes, you got to put them in there. And women go to the doctor with those symptoms, and you know what the doctor tells them? It's menopause and we need to give you HRT. So you add fuel to the fire. And then women come down, they start gaining weight, they get more depressed, they start having heavy bleeding, they go in for their DNCs, doctors up the dose of hormones. They go, oh, it's not working, we need to give you more. Part of the problem is the way women are diagnosed. In this country, when you get your hormones tested, what does the doctor do? Hey, get your hormones tested. Blood tests, right? Blood tests. Standard diagnostic treatment. Go get your blood test. Only problem is with blood tests, that blood tests only measure 1 to 9% of the biologically active hormones in your tissues. And most of those hormones that they're measuring are the metabolites, or the hormones that the body's shuttling out of the body. Up to 99% of what's in your tissues aren't tested by blood serum testing. It is a flawed test. In the United States, and you can do this here actually, the enlightened doctors and naturopaths and holistic practitioners are using saliva tests. So saliva test is the most accurate way to test the hormone levels in your tissues. So we have a flawed testing, we have a flawed diagnostic technique, which leads and supports a false premise, which leads to mistreatment and misdiagnosis of women. In the United States this year, the American Cancer Society has new statistics out about breast cancer. In the United States this year, 203,500 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer. 44,000 women will die. That's up from 190,000 women last year. Breast cancer is on the rise. Now, the American Cancer Society says breast cancer is simply not a preventable disease. Why would they want to look at the truth?
Well, they're making too much money.
Exactly. A Rockefeller-started organization. So think about it. You have the National Cancer Institute and the American Cancer Society saying breast cancer is simply not a preventable disease. It just like comes out of the blue. Fickle finger of fate is going to point to you. You know, Marie Curie said, there's nothing in this world to fear, only understand. When we understand the root causes of what's going on with breast cancer and how we can, what causes it? Of course there are causes. I mean, come on. We didn't have 203,500 women dying 100 years ago. What's different? That picture and this picture. We have drugs, we have hormones, we have pesticides, we have fungicides, we have chemicals, we have fast food, we have stress. This is not a difficult problem. But when vested interests do not want to see what is because they're causing the problem, we're going to have the American Cancer Society say breast cancer is simply not a preventable disease. And so what's the next best thing they do for women? They give you mammograms. You know, the American Cancer Society does have one good thing to say. It says the only known cause for breast cancer, the only known recognized cause, contributing factor, happens to be radiation. So we're giving women, radiation is cumulative. It doesn't like say every year you get your four little, your little mammograms, you get 4 more rads, and 4 more rads, and 4 more rads. Mammograms are 1,000 times more radiation than chest X-rays. Dr. John Goffman, who worked on the atom bomb, is now one of the leading spokespersons against the use of radiation, especially mammograms, believes that, 70, 80, 90% of cancers, especially breast cancers, can be caused by mammograms. We have thermography in this country, infrared digital thermography. You can detect possible problems 5 to 10 years before mammograms will ever do it. It's non-invasive, it's totally safe. I had it done. It's fabulous. You can do it right here in Sydney. You can do it in Melbourne. You can do it in Brisbane. That's what we need to be promoting, but you're not going to hear your doctor even telling you a word about it, are you? Digital infrared thermography. It's in my book. So real quick, we've just got a few minutes. I want to go through, we're going to talk about just progesterone. Part of the myth is that we are deficient in estrogen. The truth is we're deficient in progesterone. We have way too much estrogen. And progesterone is crucial. It helps to maintain pregnancies. Women who keep miscarrying have low progesterone levels. It helps to support the development of the fetus. It protects against fibrocystic breast disease. Progesterone, high levels of progesterone are made at the time we ovulate. That's when we take our temperature. It's the surge of progesterone. It protects us against endometrial cancer, breast cancer. There are studies that show that women who have high progesterone levels do not get breast cancer. And it builds bone. Progesterone stimulates the bone-building cells. It also is important as a precursor hormone from which the adrenals make their stress hormones. Progesterone is a natural diuretic. As I said earlier, turns fat into energy. It's a natural antidepressant. Helps women sleep at night, supports thyroid action, normalizes blood clotting, restores libido, normalizes blood sugar levels, mineral levels, increases oxygen levels in the body. Progesterone is really what's been missed the whole time. We have ways to support increasing progesterone levels by just how we eat, by herbs. There are ways that we can get our body to work. There's natural progesterone cream, which is by prescription. There's wild yam cream, which is available here, which does work. as adaptogen herbs. We can restore the imbalance, but before we can deal with the problem, we need to know what the problem is. It is not an estrogen deficiency problem in 90% of the cases. If you've had your ovaries removed, if you're very thin, if you've been sick, then there's a high probability you need a little estrogen. But one study was done on women between the ages of 65 and 80 to see if they had low estrogen levels that may need to be supported to help their bones. They found that 70% of these women had adequate estrogen levels, and those that needed estrogen needed 1/10 the standard dose. Okay, real quick. Look, there are lots of things that lead to this hormonal imbalance. That's really the plague that's happening to us now. And we've talked about many of these problems: exposure to toxins, not ovulating every month. The more overweight you are, the more fat cells you have, the more you're making estrogen. You know what one of the key drugs for women with breast cancer is now in this country? They're called aromatase inhibitors. You've heard of them? Arimidex? Aromatase inhibitors, they stop the conversion of the fat cells to making estrogen. So first of all, it's an acknowledgement that estrogen is a cause of breast cancer, which of course you know that because if you had breast cancer, doctor will immediately take you off your hormones. But also, it's a bit of a drastic approach because when you stop the conversion of your fat cells into making estrogen, especially if you're a menopausal woman, you shut down the production of estrogen. You go through major health problems and symptoms. So, we have lots of things that lead to this problem of estrogen excess. Everything from what we're breathing in, to what we're putting on our bodies, to the poorly functioning organs, our liver, our adrenals, our blood sugar, all those things, digestion, all create hormonal imbalance. And we do know where Premarin comes from, right? I understand there's a secret horse farm in Bundaberg that's making Premarin because it comes from the urine of pregnant mares. And they dehydrate the horses. They're standing 7 to 11 months of their pregnancy. That's all these horses do, year in and year out, is get pregnant. Foals are sold, for meat. And and actually Premarin, in the way that it's metabolized by the liver, is one of the most toxic forms of estrogen. It has 10 estrogens in it, only 2 are human. So unless you're really a nag, you really probably shouldn't be taking estrogen. Okay, I want to have a few minutes for questions, but we do have a serious problem in Australia. We have it in America. We have it all over the world, actually, where hormones and chemicals. And there are girls as young as 3 years of age who are showing signs of puberty. A friend of mine had a 5-year-old daughter was showing breast buds, and she was told she had about a year before this child was going to menstruate. So it was a tough call for this friend. She had to put this girl on Lupron. Lupron's a drug. It's used in prostate cancer. It totally shuts off the pituitary glands, has 265 side effects, including breast cancer. And that's with this little 5-year-old, very painful injections. Because the real reason her mother decided to use this drug is that when you start increasing your hormone levels, like you're going into puberty, your bones stop growing. So she was afraid that her 5-year-old daughter, who was going into puberty, would become a midget. Can you imagine? It's tough. She said it was such a tough decision, especially to hear her daughter screaming when she had these incredibly monthly injections of Lupron. It's a big problem, and it's happening to boys too. We have 8-year-old boys developing pubic hair. In the UK, 50%, 10 years old is considered normal now. 50% of girls in the UK by 10 are menstruating. And as I travel around the country, I meet mothers with children, with babies with pubic hair, little boys with hypospadias, which are deformities of the penis. There are serious, serious problems. So you know what they do in the United States to deal with this problem? It used to be that 12 years of age was considered the average age for puberty. So the way they deal with this problem now is they now say 10 years of age is a normal age for puberty. Lower the bar. We don't have a problem here, and we don't have to do anything to fix it. See, the earlier you're exposed to estrogen, the greater your lifetime risk is of developing breast cancer. Not to mention what it's like to be a third grader wearing a bra and having periods and going through PMS. And interested in sex. So we'll just conclude with this. I really like this. I got this from my friend Alexandra Pope. Alexandra, are you here? Yep. Alexandra, who's a wonderful advocate for women and menstrual wisdom, wrote a book called The Wild Genie, right? About reclaiming menstrual wisdom. Fabulous book. And I borrowed this quote from you. Hope you don't mind. At menarche, a young woman enters her power. Throughout her menstruating years, she practices her power. And at menopause, she becomes her power. And that's really our journey as women, to find it within ourselves, to teach it to our daughters, so future generations can understand the sacredness and the power and the wisdom of being a woman and live her life fully, vitally, in perfect health and emotional and inner peace. So, thank you. Do we have time for questions, Duncan? Okay, I'll do questions, but I do want to bring your attention to what we've made available here. This is the new updated version of my book, Hormone Heresy. And on the back, we've put a CD together, and in the CD, I have 8 of my in-depth articles talking about the 2 in-depth articles on the pill, on hysterectomies, on tamoxifen, on the myths about myths about heart disease, myths about osteoporosis, the myths of menopause. I have a lecture that I recently did, and I also have a recipe of what I recommend for all of us, men and women, to balance hormones for breakfast. How do you eat our breakfast to bring us into harmony? So this is what I call my Wise Women collection, and it's a compilation of the vast majority of the research I've done and written. And as far as a resource to support you and all the women in your lives, because you can put the CD in your computer and download all these articles and make them available and listen to the lecture through your CD player, it's really empowering information. This is the way that we are going to change the system. We have to get empowered as women, as men. We have to make our changes, and we have to share them with the people we love. Okay, we'll have, yes. Yes.
I think you said that too much estrogen causes prostate cancer?
Estrogen excess, yes, is a major cause of prostate cancer.
How does a man get too much estrogen?
Do you drink water? Do you eat McDonald's hamburgers? Do you, tap water? You get too much as a man. Real briefly, you get it from environmental sources. You also get it from a poorly functioning liver. And we have to understand that hormonal imbalances happen exogenously because of things that come into us. They also happen because of how poorly our bodies are processing and functioning. A lot of alcohol, a lot of sugar can damage our liver, and our liver cannot properly metabolize estrogen out, and it becomes a more toxic form and gets reabsorbed. It's one of the major causes of breast cancer and prostate cancer. And there are studies and there's tests now available in the States. You can check your estrogen metabolism, and these are truly preventative diagnostic tests that will let us know what's going on, not mammograms. Mammograms will be passé soon. Okay? I have a whole chapter in the book on men, actually, to explain that. Just full story in there. Yes, yes.
You mentioned the estrogens, false estrogens that come through the use of plastics and insecticides.
Well, you're right.
Repeat the question.
A lesser amount of those
Look, we live in a world that is, we have swarming with estrogen mimics. And all pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, the little plastic wrap, plastic bottles, the plastic that's inside of tin cans now, phthalates, they all actually leach chemicals that are hormone mimics. So we have some of the highest levels of these chemicals in our bodies because of environmental factors. And Nexus, this issue of Nexus, they talked about studies done on 139 streams. 80% of those streams in the United States were found to have extremely high levels of all sorts of chemicals and drugs that we pee out, including all the hormones. When we pee out our hormones, where does that stuff go? It goes into the sewage system, which is not capable of filtering them out, and it goes into the water supply. And recently they pulled a pike out of the Mississippi River. It was about that big, had 2 bodies and 1 head, because of these hormones that are hormone disruptors that are going into our water supply. It's feminizing fish, it's causing mutants in frogs and fish, and who's drinking it? We are. It's coming from so many sources. We have a lot of work we need to do. And I really encourage all of you, find a passion, find a purpose, and go and make a difference. Yes. Thanks. You know, I really want to say, change is not going to come from any government body or any organization bringing it upon us. It will only come when we say, I will no longer tolerate this. And a really good place to start is to remove all pesticides and all insecticides and all fertilizers from your school playgrounds and from your schoolyards. That's a really good place to start. Yes?
A few good tips, please, on raising progesterone levels.
A few good tips of raising progesterone levels. Okay, a few good tips. Well, first of all, if you can get a doctor to write a prescription, after you get a saliva test, please never take estrogen unless you get a saliva test, because any other test is inaccurate. So saliva test will show you if you're truly deficient. There's a wonderful herb in this country called maca, M-A-C-A. It's a Peruvian herb. It's an adaptogen herb for the endocrine system, and actually supports the entire endocrine system, getting into balance. It feeds adrenals, thyroid, pancreas, ovaries, and it actually increases progesterone levels. Maca Gold is the product I found that I like here. Wild dam creams absolutely are beneficial and can help bring the body into balance, because what we want to do is bring the body into balance so it makes what it needs. Also, the herb Vitex, Agnus castus, is a really good herb. It takes a little while, but it actually helps to regulate the ovaries. You've got to give up sugar, caffeine, alcohol. You have to give up those fried fatty foods, the hydrogenated oils. It's really important to drink plenty of water. I also recommend giving up refined carbohydrates, sugar, and aspartame. We've got to clean up most of our problems is because we're toxic and we're eating the wrong foods in the wrong way at the wrong time. Okay, thank you. Okay, yes.
I've become concerned because having listened to you in other lectures while we've been here about the estrogen not being removed in the water treatment plants or in our water supplies. And I actually gave those concerns to the chairman of our water board in our state, who really gave me the raspberry look when I said it, but nevertheless said that he had it properly tested in the water supply. There was absolutely no truth in it whatsoever. End of story. Now, where do we go?
Well, okay, so as a concerned citizen, she took her complaint about the water quality to the water...
President of our water board.
President of the water board, who said there's no problem, it's not in there at all. Well, he's either telling the truth or he's lying, or he's not testing properly. We don't know, so what do? You get a good quality water filter, and you take responsibility for at least your own personal life, and you may organize some independent testing. Yes?
Can you comment on the dangers of soy phytoestrogens?
Soy phytoestrogens, here we go. Well, I agree with everything that was written in Nexus magazine on soy. And what I suggest is that you pick up that copy, because soy is a major marketing ploy to get women, to get all of us, including infant formulas, to be taking soy, which is totally indigestible, toxic, thyroid destructive, and they do think that it increases incidence of cancer. I think a highly indigestible food, especially in its non-fermented form, I think we should be taking it very minimally, if at all. I used to be a big soy drinker, tofu, soy milk. I don't take it at all anymore. You're better off with flax, ground flax, and flaxseed oil. It does the job much better. Okay, so look, I want to say I'll be around for today. I'm happy to sign books and we can talk some more. Please, I have flyers of my lectures all around New South Wales and flyers about Queensland, and please share this message and let your friends and relatives know. I'll be available spreading the word over the next 2 months. Thank you very much.